Okay, I think we're live. Welcome, folks. Today is Adult Beverage Friday. So I have my adult beverage. What are you having? So I have a lot of topics to talk about today. and But before I get into that, I was just I came into this broadcast kind of upset. I was I was very upset because I went into a restaurant to eat, and suddenly they're like saying, "Show us your vaccination card." It's like, what the zuck? So I guess that's the first time that's implemented here now. I had no idea. I didn't know anything about it, and this is in L.A. And so the city council said, "Okay, we're gonna have a new rule that says you have to be vaccinated to eat at a restaurant." I already know they've already done this. When you watch a concert, they already ask for a vaccination card. But a restaurant, I was like, I was expecting this to happen at some point, but boy, it just shocked me. It just shocked me to have it presented to me all of a sudden because my companions, not all of them had their vaccination card with them because you're just eating at a restaurant. You're not expecting this. I'm sorry, Mike. The microphone was far away. Sorry, I am so sorry. Let me just test the mic here. I am so sorry. The mic was far away. So I am so sorry. So you're so sorry. Okay, anyway, back to what I was saying. So, okay, I'm vaccinated. So that's not even the issue. Okay, I'm vaccinated. So that's not even the issue. The issue is somebody again asking for an ID card, and this is just bugging me, and the reason it bugged me even more is that first of all the COVID infection rates are going down, and then they're like ramping up the rules, almost like we want to be we want to be Zucking communists. So I'm like anyway. Sorry for the distraction. If that doesn't bother you, then carry on. It bothered me. It upset me a lot. I lost my temper. So I lost my temper when I said I hurriedly came home and just said, "Zuck that. I'm not gonna go eat out." So I was just too upset. So anyway, so I got that out of the way now. So. Anyway, back to our topic. The topic is actually, we're going to talk about two main topics today. And one is about Facebook, and just briefly, and then we'll talk about the issue about Linux. Should we move to Linux? So, first of all, on the Facebook front, this is kind of a shocker. I have to do it on a live stream because it just happened and it's just shocked me. And that is Facebook decided that they're going to drop facial recognition. Facebook decided they're going to drop facial recognition. And in case you didn't know, what the background on that is, Facebook or Zuck was like forcing this facial recognition on and on everywhere, and he got sued in, I believe, Illinois was the first one to sue him and say, we don't want this facial recognition thing. And he basically said, "I don't care if you sue me, we're going to do facial recognition." And here we are, a little bit later, a little over a year later, and Facebook announced they're no longer going to do tagging with facial recognition. It's like, wow, guys. You don't understand how big that is because facial recognition is the biggest thing with Facebook. And Facebook is the number one facial recognition company ever. Their algorithms for facial recognition were accurate up to 98.8% back in, I don't know, 5, 7 years ago. So who knows what it is now? It is so zucking accurate. Anywhere you go, I was always like wondering, people who would post on Facebook, and you're in the background, and you would be facially recognized and be included, and Facebook would know that you were at certain location, even though you were just a background person. You're not even involved with a party posting on the Facebook account. So, and you know why this is happening, and this is hopefully tied to what I'm doing here, is that what I'm doing is finally getting Zucking attention. We are actually winning. For this to happen, it means that people are recognizing that there are some privacy risks, and we have to respond. And that's the only thing that stops the Zuck book, is when the population says, enough, this is bothering us. What you're doing is very bothersome. And sure thing, they saw the writing on the wall, because if they persisted in this, they would lose customers. And that is so good. They should lose customers in any case. They deserve to lose it. But this is amazing. So, yeah, at least they ran out of metadata. They have less metadata for meta. Less metadata for meta. So this is excellent news. This may be the first privacy win that I can remember. When was the last privacy win? It's always a loss. You could say GDPR is sort of a win, but it's kind of, more regulations. But this one is where the market forces, without anyone getting involved, made Zuck realize it's not a good thing to do facial recognition. And I am so glad that he lost on this front. But he's not stopping. You saw his Oculus thing, people are supposed to wear the sunglasses. You remember the glasses, the glasses thing with Google Glass, where, puts a camera on the glass? Well, Facebook wants to do that. So they're not done yet. They want to do some evil things. They're not done yet. So it could still happen. But at the moment, we can call this a win. This is a very, very big deal. Very, very big deal. Because one of the most dangerous things on Facebook is that. Because you could be on the road and you're not even part of the social network, and they're tracking you just by being in the picture. Zuck. So Zuck you, Zuck. I'm glad you are losing money and have to do this, because you're losing your millennial community and Gen Z. Facebook is losing ground with the young people. So, and some young people are starting to understand what my channel is all about. Some, not all, but some are. Okay, so let's shift gears now. I just want to make sure we already said that I do say that about Facebook. Now, the other topic is the fact that I made several videos over the last few weeks about operating systems, and for a couple of weeks I did Apple. So I focused on Apple, and whoa, guys, you didn't like my Apple videos. I spoke badly about Apple. I said Apple sucks, and wow, lots of dislikes. Lots of dislikes on Apple. So, crazy, because I guess, it's okay to be spied on by Apple. Okay, so, or you're not believing me. Whatever the reason is, there was a lot of dislikes on the Apple video. So then the latest one is a Microsoft Windows 11 video. And on the Microsoft 11 video, whoa! Lots of angry Linux people. Oh gosh, they were so angry. And I said, where were you when I was being attacked by all of these Apple fanboys? So Apple fanboys were attacking me, and the Linux people were quiet. And then suddenly I switched to Windows, and now the Linux people are attacking me. It's like, suck. Can't win in this thing here. So let me tell you the truth here, because this is the confusing part. yes, I have to talk about Windows, whether we like it or not, as far as the computer operating system is concerned. And because of COVID, most people are, working at home with their computers. And so computer purchases are up again. And still the majority of people are using Windows. Windows, not a Mac, Windows, and not Linux. So the question is, given the hype with the M1 chip and given the Windows 11 being a new thing, what are the options? And I just want to make sure that people are clear with the options and make a proper decision. And I had to try it out myself. I got the M1 and the Apple M1 on a MacBook Air and tested it out and tried to see if the hype is so strong that I could actually set aside the privacy issues with Apple. And the answer is no, no. I mean, it's the M1 is not as super duper as they make you think. Yes, it's a power saving machine, but as far as pure power is concerned, it's not a pure power machine necessarily, unless you spend big bucks on the M1 Max, in which case that's the same as spending the big bucks on a Windows with NVIDIA cards, the same cost range. So they're kind of equal there. So is there better performance? Well, not really. I mean, they're kind of like in line. So you have a choice of getting one of those two machines. And the thing is that I want to make clear here is that I would definitely choose Windows over a Mac. There's no doubt. There's no doubt. One of the reasons being that I don't know if I'm comfortable, even though I had to do it for my editing at one point. I don't know if I can be comfortable with a machine that's sending 24/7 location data, no matter what I do, that I can't stop. Why would I want that? I mean, it's disgusting to even think about it. That my iPhone, which I don't use, it's probably out of battery right now, so they can't really spy on me. It's out of battery, and my MacBook Pro. I have a MacBook Pro. I have a couple of MacBook Airs, 2, 3, 4 MacBook Airs. I have a couple iPads still running, that are still alive. I have a brand new iPad. So I have all this, and guys, the only reason I would use an iPad is if I never take it away from home, because I'm not comfortable with that thing, roaming around and tracking what I do. Because somebody asked me a question. Somebody asked me a question. Why are you so concerned about location tracking from either Microsoft or Apple? And of course, people are just not intellectual thinkers when it comes to stuff like this. You go with whatever you're told. So it's like, what's the danger with Facebook tracking facial recognition? Like, no big deal. So the point is, a location is an identity. If I can get your location, I can find out who you are. I can find out what house you own, if you own it, if you're renting it. I'll know everything about you just from the location. So a location is a very, very important piece of data that you don't want anybody to just get, because your neighbors know who you are, but do you want strangers knowing who you are? Strangers you have never even met on the internet. Do you want them knocking on your door? Do you want them stalking you? Do you want them bothering you? Do you want them robbing you because they found out that you were on vacation because you said so on Facebook? So location is very important, and you don't want to have that leak willy-nilly to any entity. And I'm extremely uncomfortable with somebody like Apple collecting that 24/7. Even would find my phone off. It really is bothersome. It's really, really bothersome, because on an Apple device, it's tied to the hardware, not the iCloud. You thought it was tied to iCloud. It's actually tied to the hardware. The hardware is doing the 24/7 tracking with the serial number, and then iCloud simply connects the serial number to your iCloud. So that's the only thing that iCloud does. The device. All Apple devices would find my phone, emit this data. This is not the same as in Windows. So there is clearly a difference here between Windows and Mac OS and iOS and Android. So yes, it is clear to me that Windows 11 is much safer than Mac or iOS or Android. It's clear that it is much safer. It's not perfect, but it's clear that it is much safer. So I am comfortable enough for everyday use to use Windows and think that if you configure it properly, then it's going to be okay. However, don't get confused here. Don't get confused. I am not saying that Windows is better than Linux. No. In fact, just to prove that to you, my next video will be to tell you why Linux is the best on privacy. You need to understand that. I don't think the common person understands why. They just hear it's all Linux. Linux is good, but they don't really know why. So on the next video, I will tell you why Linux is good. Now, this is going to be a bit more advanced discussion that I'm going to do today. And what I'm going to do is complain. I'm basically going to do a rant against a lot of these, Linux community, against the Linux community. Because I do have a lot of complaints. And let me just explain the background is why I have complaints about Linux. I use Linux every day. In fact, probably 80% of today was spent on Linux. So depending on what I'm doing, I run a lot of Linux servers. In fact, all of the Brax routers that I sell you are all running Linux. So I do programming on that. I have many Linux servers running. I have a ton of them. And in fact, I had to maintain them today. So I had to go connect to every one of those Zucked servers and go configure Linux. And I got to do some test stuff. And I had to do a lot of stuff on Linux servers. And I fire them up in the cloud on my Lenode account, on my Lenode ISP. So I fire up a lot of Linux servers. So I'm pretty adept with Linux. I mean, I've been using Linux for about 9 years, I think, that I've been switched from Windows. 9 years ago, I was heavy on Windows. My software was installed on Windows servers, Enterprise, and I was a Microsoft partner, and I was doing everything Microsoft, and then I shifted gears and went 100% Linux about 9 years ago, and I've only been on Linux. I don't have any Windows servers now. But I am not a daily user of Linux desktop. That's the difference. I'm a very big user of Linux servers. Use it all the time, every day. I have several computers. Some are running Linux, mostly running Ubuntu, and which, I'm sure somebody will question, why are you on Ubuntu? Or Ubuntu, or whatever, however you want to pronounce it. Why are you in Ubuntu? Why you should be on Manjaro, you should be on Arch Linux, you should be on this and that. And no, I'm not. And because I do videos, lately I've been, sticking more to Windows 11. So I'm on Windows 11 probably more often now as far as the client is concerned. My servers are all Linux, but I'm doing SSH to the Linux servers, and I'm connecting to Linux servers everywhere. So MG Toe here said, why are you in Zucked Ubuntu? Well, there's a good reason for that. And the reason has to do with my experience with Zucked Linux. Okay? So unlike other people, I do tech support. My company does, not necessarily me personally, but my company does tech support for Linux users. Okay, you have to understand, we have a kind of a different viewpoint here. My company does tech support, especially on the VPN side, where we have a VPN, and users say, well, we can't connect to your VPN using Linux. Then they go blame us for it. And the real reason is that it is different, sucking different. From one version of Linux, from one distro to another distro, it is zucking impossible, my friends, to actually say to somebody, well, this is how you configure OpenVPN on Linux. Because like which distro? And they're going to say, oh, I'm using some specialized distro of some sort. And it's like, my goodness, I mean, what do you expect? We can't know every single distro. Even the difference between Mint and Ubuntu is pretty big. So somebody would ask me, oh, I need to install OpenVPN. I need to set up the VPN on Mint. Well, guess what? Mint doesn't have a user interface for the VPN. Mint doesn't install OpenVPN on there. So you got to go to the command line. You got to say apt install network manager, and then you got to go apt install OpenVPN. And then you got to start a service, systemctl, enable OpenVPN, set up the OVPN file, the profile, and launch it in the server. I mean, it's a lot of steps. It's a lot of steps, man. I mean, really. So, I mean, you don't do this. You don't do this on a Mac. You don't do this on Windows. You don't do this on Android. You don't do this on iOS. But you got to do it on Zucked Linux. You got to do the command line. Not only that, you don't know when you got to do the command line. You have to do the command line on Mint. You do not have to do the command line on Ubuntu. Unless you want to do a service auto start at the beginning when you boot. So what is the issue with Linux? You see, mainline Linux, which is in the realm of the kernel and Torvalds, Linus Torvalds doing the kernel. On the kernel side, no issue. No issue on the server side. I mean, I don't have any problem on the server side. It's very predictable what happens. For server types of processes, you never normally have an issue. A huge difference on the desktop. I mean, humongous. This is one of the reasons that you cannot do a Linux phone that easily. Have you ever wondered why it took years and we still, I was so pepped up. And I did so many videos on Linux phones, and here we are years later, a couple of years later, and I was like, I have nothing to show for it. Somebody actually sent me a Librem 5, so I now have a Librem 5 here. Guess what? Arrived to me, and it had a pin code, so I couldn't start it. But now it won't start. Okay? The Librem 5 won't start. So the problem, guys, is that on the desktop, Linux just not the way Linux is as a community. The way Linux is organized, it's really about showing off the latest distro, it's basically the wild west. So there's DistroTube. If you ever watch him, good resource for learning about different distros and the very specifics about using Windows Linux desktop, and he's quite an expert at that, and it's great. He has a big channel and a very successful channel doing that, and I do watch him. I'm subscribed to DistroTube. I'm subscribed to all of the Linux people, but the fact of the matter is, how do I tell grandma that, hey, you need to shift to Linux? It's pretty hard for me to do that when I know I'm going to have to do tech support. With the first question is, how do I install OpenVPN on Linux? I mean, I got to start there. I mean, it's such a sucking pain. It really is. It's really, really difficult. So distribution is called distro. Don't ask me why it's called that. So that's the problem with Linux. It's basically okay. You get your mainline Linux, and everyone is able to come up with their own variation of GNU Linux in any way they want, which in a corporate environment or a user environment you don't want. You want consistency. You want stability. And in order for me to do that, I have to tell people just to stick to one. And the only one that I know of that's at least semi-complete is Ubuntu. At least, for some of the basics like Network Manager, because that does not exist on Mint. So it's kind of a pain. And then people say to you, well, Ubuntu's spying on you, so you shouldn't be using Ubuntu. You should be using Manjaro. You should be using whatever. You should be using Pure OS. Okay? And I'm not fond of purism right now, so I'm not going to tell you to go to Pure OS. But or go use Zucking Zorin that looks so much like Windows. You might as well be in Windows. So, but there are so many benefits to Linux, and I'm going to tell you exactly later on, not today, why Linux is very special. However, I do need to make this rant known, because until the Linux community decides to address who they are and what they want to do on the desktop, this distro war stuff where there's 50 million distros, it's just not good for promoting the brand. It's not good for telling, basically a beginner user what to do. People have told me, well, you can do everything on Linux. Yeah, right. If you research a topic on Linux, how do you install X? Well, if you're on Ubuntu, you go to Snap and you go to the App Store of Ubuntu, and then if there's a Snap installer, it will install in there. If you're on Manjaro, you use Yum, and then you have to know the name of the module. If you're on Debian or Debian like platforms like Mint, Ubuntu, and so on, then you can go to use APT. And it's like, how do you explain that to Zucking beginner? How do you explain that to beginner? How do you explain it? It's a struggle. I have to tell you, and I only tell you this as a tech support guy, when I have to answer a question and somebody's mad at me because, I can't install your VPN on my Mint. Typically, I hear it more often on Mint. Manjaro actually has Network Manager. So how do you respond to that? I don't know how to respond to it, because it's really, really difficult for me to recommend something and then know that they have to have a command line. And the fact of the matter is, at the moment, the best way to use the best way to use Linux is to learn a little bit about the command line. I mean, that's currently the only way. You got to learn a little bit of that. So Linux not for everyone then, if that's the idea. If that's the idea, then some people I have to recommend to go to Windows. So yeah, go do negative things and go do dislikes in my video. But the reality is, if you think you can convince your grandma to use Linux and do a command line and say apt install Apache 2, okay, it's as simple as saying, you just say apt install Apache 2, PHP, whatever, and it's like, no. You got to know every module and why you have to install this version or that version. And then here's the other problem with these. It's so different by distro. They use different repositories, in which case there are different versions. Try to do development work and you'll find that, some use Qt, some use GNOME. You can't even get the app to work consistently from place to place. It's really, really difficult. It's really difficult. So the only solution is you got to stick to one and just say, okay, we're just going to recommend you to use one. And, in the past, I've just said Ubuntu. But then now the community said, you can't use Ubuntu. Ubuntu's spying on you. It's like, Zuck, can't win. So can win. So the only reason Ubuntu is better because the corporation's behind it doing the work and they're investing the resources to do it, whereas the rest are run by volunteers. And so that's the only reason it's a little bit more organized. But, they're spying on you, so I guess you can't do anything. I mean, come on. Ubuntu is not spying on you anywhere near Windows or Mac OS. Not even near. I'm sure they're just interested in getting a count of users. So some of you are so hardcore. You got to use FOSS. You got to use this. You got to, it's like, sometimes we don't care. Sometimes we just want to get the job done. Sometimes we just want to get the job done. So anyway, I'm going to be talking to you why some of you, those with some eagerness to learn about tech, should go to Linux. I'm going to make a video about that because there is absolutely a difference in thought process how Linux is done. And but unlike the others in the Linux community, I'm going to just say stick to one and stick to it consistently and use that, and don't go shift distros every week, and stick to whatever you want and learn that you may have to dig around a lot because the instructions may be different from distro to distro. It's like saying one is Windows 7 and one is Windows 11. They're different. So because they're different, they have different approaches. So that's something you have to learn. But I will tell you why Linux is there's a reason Linux is better for privacy. There's a reason for it. I've never actually explained. I don't know why I've never explained it in any video, but I will explain to you why Linux is in fact better. But I hope the community does something and say, what do we do to get all these people across to our kind of thinking by doing it in a way that sets an objective of appealing to the grandmas of the world, which is not a goal currently. The goal is not to get grandma on Linux. So if the goal is not to get grandma on Linux, then then I'll have to tell them to use Windows. So don't come to my videos and I'm gonna go dislike you because you're recommending a proprietary system. Well, suck. I mean, I'm not here to promote any particular platform. I'm here to worry about privacy for all, and wherever you are, I need to maintain privacy for you if I can. And the fact of the matter is, I cannot do it on Mac. I cannot do it on Android unless you de-Google. I cannot do it on iOS. I can do it somewhat on Windows. Can do it a lot on Windows. Windows can be tweaked, and it would have been perfection if everyone just said, well, we just all go to Linux. But then I don't want to have to answer the questions when people say, well, I don't understand how it works. It's like, well, I don't know what to say. Okay. So anyway, we'll find out in the next video. So, and then you can share that with others so people understand why Linux is better, because it is different. It is better. And as a server, I will never go back. I personally will never go back to Windows Server. No zucking way will I ever use a Windows Server. No way. I am 100% on Linux servers only. Only. Okay, just want to make that clear. This discussion is only about the desktop. No Windows servers. Linux servers are awesome. They're nothing else to be said. There's no substitute for a Linux server. None. Bar none. Okay. So anyway, this video is sponsored by the place where I keep most of my Linux servers, aside from the ones I sell to you, because I sell out of Brax routers that are Linux on a Raspberry Pi. I have a lot of servers on Lenode. A lot. I've lost count. Okay, I have a lot of servers on Lenode. So it's funny how I got started with Lenode. I've known Lenode for a long time, but I was mostly on AWS before. And I'm pretty much down to 90% on Lenode and 10% on AWS. So I can't get rid of AWS completely because there are some services not provided by Lenode. But I've removed quite a bit of it and put it on Lenode. It's really a good company for learning how to do Linux servers and doing things on your own, like making your own websites, which you can do for as little as $5 a month. So I recently had some VPN issues, and I went to Lenode to say, what's wrong? Why are the Lenode servers slow? And they were so helpful to me to make sure we diagnose the issue, to know that it's not on their end, even though I thought it was on their end at the beginning. And they showed me data to show that it was not on their end in a very detailed way. And I really got educated. It's not my realm, I don't do ISP stuff, and they showed me and explained to me how what it means in their terms, and said, wow, I mean, if every tech support person is as qualified as everyone I've so far talked to, I mean, it's kind of an amazing company that have such high-grade tech support people. So I highly recommend Lenode. They'll give you $100 credit for 60 days, for your servers for your first 60 days. So you can spend up to $100, but some servers are as little as $5, $5 a month. You can set up a website for as little as $5 a month. So I recommend Lenode very highly. And yes, they are my sponsor, but I have very, very few sponsors. I only have two sponsors. And Lenode is, been a sponsor for over a year now, and they're like awesome to me. Okay, so anyway, I'm on my Linux Mint machine right now. I use Linux 99% of the time. I also have a Windows machine only because I have to. To be frank with you, I wasn't expecting much with Windows 11. I really wasn't. And I did an upgrade. So I already had an existing install. And I already tweaked my install, which means I got rid of OneDrive, I got rid of Cortana, and already tweaked a lot of registry settings to avoid all the spyware with all the personalization and all that. And I was expecting that when I installed Windows 11 that I'm going to have a lot of trouble and I'm going to have to go tweak a lot of stuff. But guess what? When I installed Windows 11, for the first time, this must be the first time I've experienced it from Microsoft. For the first time, Microsoft didn't extend their reach from a spy point of view. From what I set it to, the system recognized I was blocking OneDrive and Cortana and all these settings, and it didn't make a peep. It didn't push OneDrive. It didn't push Cortana. It didn't do anything. It left it exactly as I wanted it without Cortana and OneDrive. And I said, interesting. Actually, I was a little surprised. I was expecting a lot of trouble. I expected I had to reinstall my old Windows. And they didn't do that. So then that's why I have such a positive opinion of Windows 11, because Microsoft didn't suggest that they're turning into a spy company. They seem to pull back. They seem to realize that, we're going to have all this Cortana and all that because people expect it of their Mac OS. So we're going to make sure that you have all the capabilities so that people can compare operating systems and say, oh yeah, we have that, we have this. We're equal with Mac OS. But in terms of the spyware side of it, it's a lot less. So, that's kind of refreshing because you never see that. You never see that. So, I'm glad they did that because then at least I have some options to offer. If you're looking for a tablet, here's the other problem with Linux. Linux doesn't have a good support with a lot of drivers. If a company comes up with a new device with new touchscreen, with different resolution and so on, typically there will be no Linux drivers for it. Somebody has to write it and it's proprietary. So somebody has to rewrite it in open source, and that'll take time because somebody has to spend the time to do it. And the smaller the product, the chances of that getting written are much less. Sometimes it takes years. So by that time, the hardware is already old. Fortunately, Linux doesn't use as much resources, so Linux often will run faster even on an older machine. However, that's been the problem with Linux. When people come to me and say, well, I want to buy a tablet, what do you recommend? Since I can't de-Google tablets, what do you recommend? Do we go with iOS, an iPad? And I say no. Okay, I'm going to tell you right now that based on what I just told you on the Windows 11 video, if you're going to have to choose a tablet, which is, there are hardly any Linux options there, so you don't even have a choice. You either lose that market with privacy or you give them an option. The option is, yes, there's an option with tablets. Use Microsoft Surface and set it up the way I set it up. I told you in the video, use Microsoft Surface. That will be a lot better than an iPad and iOS. At least, you can control the spying, whereas on the other one, you cannot. So that's what I recommend, is to use Microsoft Surface. I want to be able to make that statement clearly. There is no Linux option for such a device. None. So if somebody says, "Well, I want to use a touch interface and on a newer computer so I can watch movies and whatever, read books," there's no Linux options that will work. The closest thing I can tell you is a Pinebook, which is just too weak of a processor to actually even do videos. You can't watch 4K videos on that. It doesn't have the CPU for it. It doesn't have the decoder. It doesn't have the CPU power. So if you want to have a modern device that can do modern things, you don't have a choice. You're going to have to use something better. And for that, I recommend a Microsoft Surface. So, okay, Microsoft Surface. The other thing is, with Ultrabooks, you're kind of, you're limited with options with Ultrabooks. Yeah, by the way, that's a Manhattan. I don't have the proper glass, but that's a Manhattan. For what a Surface costs, I'd rather get a laptop. No, actually, the Surface Go 2 is fairly cheap. It's smaller. It's a form factor thing. So, obviously, if you want to use a laptop, you're going to use a laptop. But people say, "Well, I don't want to type. I want to use touch, and I want to use it in such a way that like a book." So you can't say read a book on a laptop. So let's face it, you're not going to want to read a book on a laptop. So it depends on what you want to do. You gotta give them the option. Okay. So how about Raspad? Well, it's Raspberry Pi, so it's as slow as Raspberry Pi. What about a Fire HD tablet? That's Android. You want to be spied on by Amazon too? No. So, okay, so you have to understand, I'm not here to push a particular solution. I'm just saying, given the costs and benefits, which are the options. So we're going to grade them. The option number one, worst case scenario, to me, the worst one, is iOS. Worst one, for sure. iOS, the worst one. There are things that iOS does that even Android doesn't do. For example, I told you about the mesh network with Apple AirTag and how that can spy on your location. That's done by iPhones, iOS. It is not done on Android. Android doesn't even have that. So as bad as Android is, they have a feature, one feature that is on iOS and not on Android. So as far as spying capability, there's more spying on iOS. So, no, seriously, iOS is the word. I'm not going to buy an iPhone. Suck that. No iPhones for me. If you buy an iPhone, leave it at home. Don't let it leave your house. Okay, so no choice there. So next in line is Android. Android is, is obviously bad. It doesn't have that mesh network, Apple AirTag, which can communicate your location even without ducking internet, which Apple can do. Do you understand that? The iOS phone not only tracks your location 24/7, it can send that location to other devices, other iPhones, even when you don't have internet. So you take away your SIM card, it's still sucking spy on you, even if you're not connected to the internet. It's really a zucked up device. So no fucking way should you get an iOS phone. No way. It's the worst. Okay, so if you're gonna get a Android, well, don't get one of those Chinese brands because they probably put spyware on there. So I'm talking about not all phones are made in China. I'm talking about the specific ones that have no connection with the U.S. Like Lenovo is connected to the U.S. Lenovo is still partially owned by Google and IBM. Motorola is owned by Lenovo. Motorola is owned by Lenovo. Yeah, Lenovo owns Motorola. Which I sell. I sell Motorola phones. They're actually owned by Lenovo. So Lenovo makes your computers. And they've tried to put some spyware on PCs and they were caught and then they stopped doing that. I actually have a Lenovo PC. It doesn't have that spyware on it. So next in line is Mac OS. So in terms of worst to best, so Mac OS would be third. So iOS, Android, Mac OS. Mac OS is does a 24/7 spying. The spying is not as bad as iOS because it doesn't have sensors. If they had sensors, they'll spy on you. So fortunately, a Mac OS doesn't have the sensors to spy on you too much. It spies on you a little bit. No, it spies on you a lot, but it's a lot. It's a little less than spying on iOS. Okay. Windows spies on you. Okay, got it. Windows spies on you, but they let you turn it off. Okay, they let you turn it off. So if they let you turn it off, then turn it off. So if they let you turn it off, we're all happy. Microsoft is happy you bought their stuff, and we're happy that we don't have to be spied on. So yeah, Microsoft, I think, made an attempt to copy Google and Apple, say, hey, they're doing it, so we're going to do it too. And then they pulled back and say, wait a minute, this is not a win. Let's not push this. And they haven't. One thing that I want to say, guys, one thing that I want to say is some people say, well, Microsoft may be spying on you even though they say they're not spying on you. Be careful with that statement. I have found that the large corporations don't actually lie with that. They actually state so. When I say what I'm saying about Apple and Google, they state that they're not hiding the fact that Apple's spying on you 24/7. You can find it in a tech support, on Apple. Yeah, they don't. You cannot turn off Wi-Fi scanning. They're very clear with that, and that is what is used for Find My Phone. Yeah, they do 24/7 spying where it sends the serial number. They don't advertise it, but they're not going to hide it from you. When Facebook said they spy on you with MAC addresses, it's actually under terms of service. They have to indicate that because they're going to get sued if they spy on you, even though they said they're not. And it's the same with GDPR. If Microsoft claims that they're not spying on you and then they spy on you, they'll be liable in the GDPR case. So Microsoft claims that when you turn off the switches that I'm talking about, that you're okay. So at least on the Microsoft side, as far as Microsoft liability, you have to assume that they're not lying there. However, I'm going to tell you a little news that I discovered on Microsoft Windows. So anyway, the next in line from Mac OS is Windows. Windows is better than Mac OS, so it's getting from worst to best here. And of course, the best one is Linux. So if you can't afford to commit to Linux by buying a machine that's specifically designed for Linux, then do so, and you have some learning to do. But once you do, then the benefits will be more long term. So if you can do that, that's fine. If grandma does not want to switch to Linux, I think the Linux crowd is kind of two-way. It's the one who doesn't do much on the computer, in which case Linux won't matter. If all you do is go to the browser, I guess Linux is fine. If you use Windows very heavily, Linux very heavily, and you want to go command line, you'll be fine with Linux too. The problem is that middle ground where people need to do a few things, such as what they do in Windows, but not at the basic level, and that means that those people in the middle have to go to the command line and do apt install yum this that. So okay, and then then they're going to be confused. Say what the heck is Snap? What's the difference between yum, apt, and Snap? Why are not all things on Snap? What are all these repositories? Why do I have to update sources.list and etc apt sources.list? Why do I have to do that? Why do I need to go do a signature thing when I download certain things? So I have a key. Well, you know what I mean. It's a lot to explain. So yeah. And then why do some apps not work? They're using GTK, Qt, this, that, a lot to explain there. So the best way is probably for one person to say, we're just going to use X, and X, let's say, is Ubuntu. We're going to use Ubuntu regardless because it's hard to teach. And if you want to, learn about all the different ones, and when you get more advanced, you can go try the different distros, and then you go watch a distro tube, So you can follow his channel, Distro too. So yeah, if you want to learn all that. So I am not a desktop Linux expert. Won't claim that. I won't have make any claims. Those guys know more about desktop Linux than ever will find out because I don't spend that much time with it. I know a lot about the servers. So if you ask me, how Linux works, how it boots, and init and init RAM FS, and I mean I know all that. So I know Linux very well. Just like I knew Windows very well. I was a Microsoft partner. I used to fly to Redmond and go meet with Microsoft folks there to learn about what's new and tell me the new technologies. So I did that for many, many years. So anyway, so anyway, if you can, go to Linux. If you can't, then the only choice remaining is really Windows 11. Okay? You love me in Star Trek. Are you sure you can? Are you sure I can? Don't you want me to go back to China so that I won't find my way back though because I can't open my eyes. By the way, that's a good news. A good thing to try out. Yeah, run Windows 11 and run Linux in a VirtualBox. It's an excellent way to learn Linux. Run VirtualBox, run Linux inside, then you're learning Linux inside Windows. You get some of the benefits of Linux without the doing too much on the Windows itself, which will stop a lot of the spyware. It's not a bad idea. It's not a bad idea. It's a good way to learn it. It's a transitional thing. Install VirtualBox. I have a video on that doing a virtual machine. You should do that. It's an excellent way to learn Linux, and I'll suggest that again in my next video. It's really not a bad thing. Are the Pine phone good? Pine phone's good. Somebody told me they're getting close to usable. I really haven't gotten back to my Pine phone. I have the box here. So they have the Pine Phone Pro, which I haven't ordered. Yeah, so I actually have a Librem 5 that won't run. I was going to talk about that, but it's not running right now. I would be talking about it otherwise. These are Linux phones. If these were successes, the world would change. Let me just tell you some general things about the Librem 5, if I can get it to run, because it's not running. It's just dead. I don't know why it's dead. Okay, I charge it and then it's dead. I have no idea. The Librem 5 is very, very thick. But when it was in my hands, I said, this is not actually bad. It feels like a typical, Android in a case. It's kind of like a heavy-duty case. It's that kind of thick. And when you put it on a standard Android like a Google 4 XL 64, I have one here, like one of these, which is this is a big phone, right? This is the XL size, and you put this in a case. Now this is thin, but when it's in a case, it gets about as thick as a Librem 5. And so I actually, surprisingly, I didn't mind the thickness. It wasn't that bad at all. It was okay. And then when I was playing around with it before it shut down, I couldn't really get into it because it was on a lock screen. But the responsiveness was okay for an old machine. It's really old CPU now. It's basically, just slightly more powerful than a Raspberry Pi. But it's actually okay. The GPU on it made the screen responsive. It seemed to be more responsive than even the Pine phone. If I can get it to run, we'll see how that works. It was an evergreen model of a Librem 5. I have an order for evergreen model of a Librem 5, which I have not received, but at least now I have one I can try. Okay? So I have one that I can try. So I'll give you, maybe we'll go on a Friday night like this and go play with it, and I'll give you, a real-time feedback. So, are you able to de-Google a Pixel 6? No. Not yet. Linux is my primary W10, secondary, actually W10 for gaming. Uh, yeah, the problem is when you want to use the high-end NVIDIA cards, you really have no good option but to use Windows because you're going to have to find a driver for that version of the NVIDIA card, and that's not always available for you. So, anyway. Can you do a PinePhone update as well? Yeah, so I hear the PinePhone is getting close to being better. I actually bought a new motherboard and I got to install the motherboard. I don't know where it is. Somewhere in here, I bought a new PinePhone motherboard. And then I have to install the PinePhone motherboard on the device, which has better power management. Power management is one of the biggest issues. How's my new laptop working? I don't have a new laptop. I have an old laptop. My old laptop is a MSI Creator 15, which is a 10th gen 10875H with 64 gigabytes of RAM. So that's a lot of RAM. I updated it from, I think it came with 32, I believe, and then I updated it to 64, and then it has an NVIDIA RTX 2070 Max-Q. So, yeah, so there's new ones now with 11th gen CPU with 3070 NVIDIA, so that'll be, could be 50% faster, but that's probably not good enough to spend the money. I'll wait for the next Intel chip. Like in the first quarter, there's a new Intel chip coming out that is similar to how they're doing the M1 chip for Apple. They're trying to copy a little bit about how they handle the data flow on the Apple M1. So hopefully it'll perform a bit faster. I do 4K video editing on Linux. Yes, you can. Good for you. I have not been successful with that. I've loaded DaVinci Resolve, won't run. I do not have a Linux machine with NVIDIA. You have to find a machine that's compatible with the right NVIDIA card. That's a challenge. So if you want a Linux computer, you can buy one from... the best way to do it is to actually get computers that are designed for Linux. So the one that I used was Star Laptop from the UK, and very inexpensive Linux machine. You can find a good Linux machine for just a little bit over $1,000 for the high-end model, and even under $1,000 for the slightly lower one. And then if you want some choices, you can go to System 76. System 76 has a lot of choices. So I like the choices on System 76. It's pricey though. So System 76 is pricey. I don't really recommend buying any laptops from Purism because you're going to be waiting for your computer for many months, and they tend to be late because they don't sell that many. So they tend to have older CPUs. So their CPUs are typically, I think they just upgraded to a 10th gen. They were like 8th gen even last year. So they're very slow with that. So not my recommended one. So Star Laptop has been a good company. I really like them. They don't sponsor my videos, but they know who I am now because I bought a computer for them with my own money, and I poured coffee on it, and they replaced the key. They sent me a new keyboard. I bought a new keyboard for it. I had problems fixing it, and then I sent it back to them, and they fixed it and sent it back for no extra charge. But the thing was, they returned it within a week from the UK, which means I sent it. If you send it Monday and you get it Friday, going to the UK and back, that's pretty amazing. So yeah, that's very good commitment to service. I like it. So ThinkPads are Lenovo's. So ThinkPads are great. In fact, I had many ThinkPads. They're Lenovo's. They're kind of high end. So they're high end like corporate machines. So they're good for Windows. They're also good for Linux, the old ones, because they're kind of standard corporate machines. They tend to run well in Linux. So yeah, I unintentionally allowed someone to attach an SD card to my Samsung phone. Could it be compromised? It's pretty hard to compromise a phone OS. You'd have to intentionally install some malware on it. What about NVIDIA? Hold on. Hold on. Slavic. Is there a way to set up an Android, not the Google, but have a Linux phone in a VBox? No. No. Because Android is already a virtual machine. And in case you didn't know, Android, and likely iOS too, I don't really know, is already running inside a virtual machine. So you want a virtual machine inside a virtual machine? Okay, YouTube deleted that post about, yeah. So no, you can't do that. So the problem with Android, as it is with all other Linux choices, is the device drivers. And that's why you can't like put Linux on a box, because nothing is going to operate with the device drivers. They're all proprietary. You can buy like old ThinkPads on Amazon and so on, for eBay for cheap. Do you have a Windows laptop recommendation instead of a tablet? Yeah, it depends on what you want. In terms of recommended laptops, in the costly range, it depends on the size. I prefer an Ultrabook personally, so I choose an Ultrabook model. I'm currently using here an older machine. This is 8th gen, I believe, is a HP Spectre X360, which is a consumer model and ultralight, and runs fine, no problem. Not good for doing video editing, I can tell you that. The better machine, which is faster, the problem with these is they throttle the CPU for heating reasons. So the best machine that doesn't throttle as much is the Dell XPS. So for ultralights, one of the better ultralights is the Dell XPS 13. So if you're willing to go for that, that's a very good model for that. If you want the high-end one, there's the XPS 17, XPS 15, and so on from Dell, and they have NVIDIA cards. So I actually looked at those, but if you want something with more gaming style, then you got to look at the Asus ROG. What is it? Which is it? Forget the model number. And then the MSI. The MSI is bigger. The Asus ROG and the MSI are gaming machines, which I use for video editing, and they're bigger and heavier. So if I would rather get a thinner one. But if you need to go do video editing, it's going to be heavier. So like I was looking at a Dell XPS 17, that's a nice big screen compared to my 13-inch here, which would be good for editing. The problem is they're still throttled a little bit compared to the ROG and the M1, what is it? The MS Creator, no, the MSI Stealth, which is the one I have is equivalent to a MSI Stealth G65, I think. It's called an MS Creator 15, so that was last year's model. The new model is a 66 or Stealth 66, G66 or G77. I'm not sure now. But yeah, so if in terms of performance, uh, nothing beats Nvidia card at the moment. They're still, for the price, they're still a better bargain than even the one from Apple. Okay, and no spyware. WP, thank you so much. Thank you so much, WP. I glanced up and the chat flew away there, and I didn't even see that. Mint is very regularly updated. Yeah, but why is Mint inconsistent? Why do they not have Network Manager? Why do I have to go do that? Why have to set up Network Manager? Goodness, it's a problem. Nvidia is not awesome. Depends on what you're trying to do. The Nova X1 Carbon is a very good machine. Very good machine. So, what is you saying? Mati? I don't know what that means. 228, 206. What is that in relation to? So, oh, yeah. So, well, thank you for those who hit like. That's very kind of you to hit like. My videos on Apple were not well received. I talked about Apple in a few videos, and my viewership, like, I guess nobody likes me talking negatively about Apple, and they don't like me to talk positively about Windows, about Microsoft. So it's like, can't win. And then if I'm going to talk about Linux, the majority of people who already use Linux will not find anything of value because they say, well, we already know that. So I can't win on that too. But I have to tell you, you have to know why. I just bought an Acer Chromebook. Oh, why did you do that? Oh my gosh. Dump your Chromebook. Oh my gosh. Why would you buy a Chromebook? Do not ever buy a Chromebook. Mate, and Cinnamon are desktop environments. Yes, which I don't want to confuse people with those environments. You know what? The one thing with Linux is, how do you can pronounce anything? Start with that. It's like, oh, we're so special, we're not going to let you pronounce it. So, yeah, that's the sign of we're such a special group. We have secret names. You have to say GNOME, GNU. It's like Zuck. But like I said, we can't all be on Linux. But if you can, you should be on Linux. If you can. Okay. look at James Brown. Asking me about some other distro. I don't really know. I'm not go to DistroTube. Ask him. I am not the distro expert. Mostly I stuck to one, Debian, and then from Debian I migrated to Ubuntu just because it's convenient. Other than that, I would have stuck with Debian forever. Keep it simple. So yeah, that's what I like about Debian. It's predictability. Debian doesn't have snap. It doesn't have all this. It's just plain and simple. So Debian was my preference before, but got to move with the times, right? So yeah, there were certain things that Ubuntu made convenient for development purposes. So I went with Ubuntu for my servers. So DistroWatch seems to be a good site for Linux distros. Oh, I'm sure it is. Since Fedora 33 update, I lost Wi-Fi access. Can only use Ethernet. You see what I'm talking about? Wagon loads. See what I'm talking about? And what that is some modules not updated. So don't ask me about all these different distros because I have the opposite point of view. Consistency. I don't care what the distro is. Be consistent. Too much risk with constant changing. It's very difficult for tech support. Very different very difficult to maintain. And if somebody has a question, you don't know why. Like, oh, my Fedora disconnected from the internet, and who's gonna know that? Oh, such and such. Oh, network manager was updated and there was a bug, and it's like, okay, uh, so I switched to Ubuntu after so many years of, most of my time was spent using Debian. So most of my servers were Debian, and all Raspberry Pi, Raspbian. So those were the two uh, distros I was using heavily for server side. So I don't really like to use too much um, on the desktop side that is not consistent. So I tend to use Ubuntu for desktop just because I want to be consistent. And then people started saying that Ubuntu is spying on you, and in fact it is sending a little. I tracked it. It is sending a ping to Ubuntu.com every time you start the computer and every so often. So there is a regular ping to Ubuntu.com. I grant you that actually does exist. I'm guessing they want to count their users. So since they're a commercial enterprise, it's must be a marketing desire. So I understand that. So is it good for privacy? Probably not. But what am I going to do? I mean, I need to have some consistency. Being supported by a corporation means that they have more resources. They did, in fact, start the design of Ubuntu Touch. So the phone, the phone OS that we keep talking about, Ubuntu Touch. They did that was started by Canonical before they got rid of it, and then now it's taken over by the Ubuntu Touch Foundation. Ping on Mint. Nobody's ever said anything about ping on Mint, but I don't use Mint. Your videos are being promoted again. I'm going 2 to 3 showing on the suggested. Amazing, isn't it? Suddenly they're because people like people like my Windows topic, but boy they hated the Apple ones. Goodness, if I say anything negative about Pop OS is good, I'm sure. Pop OS is based on Debian. Yeah, they hated the. I think Pop OS is based on Ubuntu, actually, isn't it? Then Pop OS might be better. But I don't really I don't have time to go back and forth with distros. I got other things to do. So yeah, I'm just too busy. On Raspberry Pis, I use a Raspbian. I was watching a new pipe and just logged into live chat. Thank you, Gaurav. So, 3rd of November in Audi. 3rd of November. Remember that. Your opinion on Kali Linux. If you're learning to do hacking, you need to learn Kali Linux because it has a bunch of tools. It's not really for ordinary users. Kali Linux is specifically made to have attack tools, which I use. I use Kali Linux. So if you want attack tools, you go to Kali Linux. It's all there. All the Wi-Fi, route, all that stuff is on there. So you can load those same utilities on any Linux distro, but they happen to be preloaded on Kali Linux. Kali Linux is not for the average person to use. I would never recommend you to say, I'm going to load Kali Linux because it looks interesting. It's going to protect me for privacy. No, that's not what Kali Linux is for. It's very inconvenient to use. It's really made for the hacker. So if you're the hacker type, then you use Kali Linux. Everyone's like promoting Mint, and the problem with Mint is I can't install a VPN on it. What are your thoughts on instead of Lineage for DGoogle? If you want to use it, you can use it. It's fine. Again, in general, the when it comes to the variations of custom ROMs for Android, if it has no gaps, which obviously is true of Calyx and Graphene and so on, then it's fine. It'll work great. So if you want to use that, it's fine. Use it. Now, what I don't like is when, hardcore people from communities of those groups come to me and say that such and such is better because it has some special cybersecurity features and so on and on and on. And then you'll find a lot of that is crap. Yeah, some of the stuff that is justified as being the features of someone that is not really all that important if you actually know what is being said. Some of these well-known ones are supposed to be your most secure. Android custom ROM protects you against X, and when there's even no threats against X, there's been no X attacks. So you're protecting and you're claiming it's better because you're protecting against X. Okay, I'm the privacy guy here. Being the privacy guy, I'm telling you that I recommend custom ROMs with no gaps for Android, and they will, in fact, all of them, with no exception, will work for privacy as long as you do micro G instead of going to any Google Store, and use F-Droid, and use F-Droid and Aurora Store. So if you do that, then you can run a lot of stuff that you can run on Google. The main ones like Lineage OS is less restrictive. It's less restrictive. If you're going to use some of the other ones, they want you to use only F-Droid because they're so hardcore for perhaps the wrong reasons, or whatever the reasons are. I'm not. I think they're solving something that I don't need to get solved. So, okay, if you want to use those, they're fine. There's nothing wrong with using them, but I don't need to use it. The reason I use Lineage OS is well supported. It has a large number of devices that can support compared to the other ones, and it's a large open community. And for what it does for privacy, it does a great job. Again, to remind you all that nothing really beats a DeGoogle phone. A DeGoogle phone is safer. I'm going to, if you want the safest machine, I didn't actually mention it to you. The safest machine of all is actually an Android DeGoogled with an Android custom ROM with no gaps. It's actually, it's safer than Linux. It's safer than Linux. I didn't tell you that, but that's the reality. Okay, your Linux guys are going to get upset even though Android is made from Linux. The reason is security. Okay, the reason is security. The SE Linux as implemented on Android is way superior to the SE Linux. To any like AppArmor or whatever you can do on desktop Linux, because they don't really set any rules. It's like, yeah, you can install AppArmor, SE Linux, and all these different things to supposedly guard against bad apps, but it does very little. Because the way that SE Linux is implemented on Android is that every piece of code compiled on Android has to have SE Linux rules in it built in. So the app cannot do anything without the permission from the operating system based on whatever the policies are. And the policies are based on the settings that you have in the app permission section. There's no such thing on Linux. It doesn't exist. So it doesn't exist on Linux phones. It doesn't exist on mainline Linux. It exists on Android. Somebody spent the time to do it on Android. They did not do that on Linux yet so far. So far, it's not done. Now, I made a mistake in my video. I can't take this Linux bashing. Okay, so let me just tell you something. I made a mistake, and the mistake was the app security section of Windows 11 I thought was better than it was. I looked at that and I said, oh, look, Windows is implementing something similar to SE Linux, with the same permission settings. Apparently it's optional. So all of the Windows apps, all of the apps made by Windows, by Microsoft, do follow the rules with the app permissions. However, I wrote a test program to do Wi-Fi triangulation, and it got through the app permissions. So the app permissions do not work for all apps. It has to be only for a set of apps that actually embed the permissions layer on it, which is a problem. It means that Chrome, Firefox, all of those are still capable of doing Wi-Fi triangulation, which is bad news. So it means that malware can still infect us and do Wi-Fi triangulation on Windows. So it is not perfect. So that is kind of a thumbs down on the Windows 11 video. Sorry to say that, I tested it with Microsoft code because I was using a test account and I didn't have my own code on there. Then when I loaded my own stuff on there, it's like, suck, this doesn't work. Okay, so not happy with that. So as far as the app protection layer, I thought it would be better than Linux. No, it failed. It failed. How do you stop Wi-Fi triangulation? You got to stop it at most Wi-Fi triangulation is done at the browser. Just make sure the browser never gets location permissions. Disable location permissions in every browser. Now, can some apps run Wi-Fi triangulation? Yes. So usually we access Facebook from a browser. If Facebook got an app on your PC, you're zucked. Is there a Facebook app on the App Store? If it does, it'll Wi-Fi triangulate you. Turning off the Wi-Fi would disable Wi-Fi triangulation. Airplane mode doesn't do it. How do you turn off the Wi-Fi? Airplane mode does not turn off Wi-Fi triangulation. So how do you turn off Wi-Fi? That's a question you need to ask yourself. Some computers, I have an old Toshiba that had a Wi-Fi switch. I don't know of any device that has a Wi-Fi switch. So there's your problem. You cannot turn off the Wi-Fi. Therefore, you cannot stop Wi-Fi triangulation. Okay, so Facebook. Enrique, why are you even on Facebook? Why are you even on Facebook? I mean, you to even discuss that, that's a problem. Windows 10 has a Wi-Fi switch or a airplane mode switch. No, it's airplane mode switch, not a Wi-Fi switch. No. Windows 10 does not have a Wi-Fi. It has to be hardware switch. It has to turn off the Wi-Fi. So can you buy a computer without Wi-Fi and then just plug in a USB stick with Wi-Fi and then pull it out? Yeah, but all the laptops have it. Glasswire is great. I'm using Glasswire on my computers. But it doesn't have a Bluetooth switch. Does it really matter? Bluetooth is not useful on a computer. The danger of Bluetooth is on mobile. Contact tracing and all that. It's not that. It's not an issue on a computer. You cannot toggle off the Wi-Fi. You're only doing airplane mode. That is not a Wi-Fi switch. Okay. Even if you're on airplane mode, Wi-Fi triangulation works. Wi-Fi triangulation is read only. It just reads all the networks around you. It doesn't connect to a network. Airplane mode simply says do not connect to the network. That's all it does. It doesn't stop the transmission or receive. Wi-Fi triangulation is receive only. Therefore, you cannot stop it. How do we use a form of YouTube on your Google phone? New pipe, just in case, or use the browser. You can use the browser, you can use New Pipe. New Pipe is a better interface, but if you want to hit like and all that, use a browser. It works fine. Okay? The only thing you can't do on the Google phone is manage a YouTube. It's called the YouTube Studio for creators. You don't have that. There's no creator capability. Okay, use a Wi-Fi jammer. How are you going to jam your neighbor's Wi-Fi? That's illegal, so I'm not going to suggest that to you. Okay, you're out. Why are you out, end of days? You mad at me? Go live in an abandoned mine. You don't have to. You can live inside a microwave. That should protect you against Wi-Fi. Use two devices to use Google and YouTube, etc. I do have two devices. I have one that is really pretty much always off. I don't turn it on. My second device, my standard Android, can actually be controlled on Windows 11. So I was playing around with that, and that's not a video I got to make. Is using Android emulation on Windows. So yeah, that's a future video. How to do Windows, Android emulation on Windows. On Windows 11, they're going to release a native Android emulator, so you can run the APK file directly on Windows without any kind of emulator. They will allow that soon. So it's in beta. I don't have that yet. I tried to install it, but they will allow that. But you can use some other kind of emulators right now, just simulate it. So this is something that's, New Pipe is the name of the app, just in case. Okay. So anyway, we're out of time, of course. And why not just shoot down the GPS satellites? Go, hire Elon Musk and send out your little rockets out there to destroy those satellites. Can I use a vanity URL with Brax Mail? You can set your name to whatever you want, but it's only whatever domains I give you. I don't know what you mean by vanity URL. So whatever you use your name, you only have one name per account. New Pipe on the Google phones best to use. Yes. Would using lots of ESP32s to make fake Wi-Fi hotspots defeat Wi-Fi triangulation? No. Why would it? Unless you turn them on and off. Because, in order for them to matter, they have to be on the database. Okay, so let's see. So what do you think about satellite phones? They're like any other phones. The only positive thing I can say about satellite phones is there's no Google or anything on it, so it's just a phone. It's the equivalent of a flip phone. It's expensive. If the government wants to spy on you, they just go to, if you have an Iridium, for example, they just go to the Iridium headquarters in San Diego, hook up their spy device directly to it, and they don't need to go very far. All of the conversations in Iridium will be on one point of entry and exit, Iridium headquarters. For that reason, I don't know what you think the benefit is of that. So no, I don't recommend that. Use encrypted traffic over existing channels like standard internet, and use encrypted conversations, like using things like Signal, Jitsi, XMPP, and things like that. Okay, so use encrypted conversations. That's the best. Okay, guys, I'm out of time. So Wi-Fi, will Braxmail ever be open source? Braxmail is open source. What are you talking about? Braxmail is open source. The only thing used on Braxmail are open source code. It's on a Linux server using only open source products. That's the only thing it uses. So I don't know what you're talking about. So yes, Braxmail is completely open source. Okay, so thank you, my friends, and see you next time. And I'll be talking about why you should be on Linux. Why you should be on Linux. So if you're not yet on Linux, what you can do is run a virtual box, and then you can learn how to use Linux. So stay tuned for that video next week. Bye-bye. Good night. See you later.